Tēnā koutou katoa, nau mai, haere mai, and welcome to tonight's webinar, Setting Our Kids Up for Success and What It Takes to be a Good Sports Parent. Ko Kelly Curr tō ko he a Sport Development Consultant mō I Aotearoa. So my name is Kelly Curr and I'm a Sport D Consultant at Sport New Zealand, and I will be your host for this evening. I'd like to start this webinar with our Sport New Zealand karakia, and this karakia is about bringing us together and settling us into tonight's kaupapa. Tu taua mai I runga, tu taua mai I raro, tu taua mai I roto, tu taua mai I waho, kia tau ai te mauri tū, kia tau ai te mauri ora, tutu whakamaua kia teina, haumie, huie, tai kie. So kia ora everyone, and thank you all for joining us. Welcome to our New Zealand audience, and welcome to our international audience. We've seen some people jumping in from Singapore and from Australia, so kia ora, welcome. I'm really excited for tonight's session, and I'm sure that you'll get a lot from our three special guests, Simone Spencer and Toni and Craig Hoskin. So this webinar is part of a series that we run to support Balance is Better, Sport New Zealand's philosophy for youth sport. And hopefully many of you will have heard about Balance is Better, but for those that haven't, Balance is Better is our national framework for youth sport. It's about ensuring all young people receive quality sport experiences, regardless of ability or needs or motivations. It's about keeping young people in sport. It's about putting the focus back on having fun and about supporting young people to reach their potential, whatever that might be. And I know that I've mentioned this a number of times on different webinars, but we all play a role here in this, whether we're sports administrators or coaches, or particularly important for our kōrero tonight, parents. So before I introduce our special guests and we get into that conversation, just a couple of housekeeping things. So we'll be running some live polls and asking a couple of questions in the chat. So please watch out for these to pop up, and it'll be great to have you contributing. If you have any questions, please pop these into the chat. And if you haven't found it, it's on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll be monitoring this throughout the evening, and we'll do our very best to answer as many of the questions as we can. To test out the chat function, if you haven't already, please pop your name and where you are from into that chat. If you have any technical issues with the video, close the window, come back in on the same link again. If the issue persists, then you can contact Hamish, who is our IT guru in the background, and he will be using the email address that you got the link on. So let's get into this. Setting our kids up for success and what it takes to be a good sports parent. It is my absolute pleasure to introduce our three special guests for this evening. Firstly, Simone Spencer. So Simone is a portfolio manager at Aktive. She's a strategic lead for the organisation's work across women and girls, active recreation, coach development, and good sports. So quite a bit on your plate there, Simone. And Simone is still actively involved in surf lifesaving and is a member of Mairangi Bay Surf Club and has two boys in their 20s.
Yep, spot on.
There we go. And we're incredibly fortunate as well tonight to have Toni and Craig Hoskin joining us from the lovely Gisborne. Toni is the active health manager at Sport Gisborne Tairāwhiti and is now exploring life coaching. And Craig is currently the IT manager at New Zealand Teaching Council. Both are phys ed graduates from Otago University. And they have two daughters, Courtney and Alicia. And Alicia recently represented New Zealand at the Tokyo Olympics in canoe sprint. So welcome to you both. So during tonight's session, we're going to hear from both Toni and Craig about their experiences as sports parents, some of the lessons they've learned along the way, and then Simone and I are going to layer in some of the research and insights that can support parents to set our kids up for success. We've allowed time throughout for questions, so as a reminder, just pop that stuff into that chat function. Before we get underway, we've got one more thing that we need you to do, is we're going to pop up a couple of polls just to get a sense of who's on the call. So Hamish, if I can cue you up for that for me, please, sir. So the first one is, what's your role in youth sport and which hat are you predominantly wearing tonight? So we know that everyone wears multiple hats. You know, I'm a parent and I'm a coach and I'm on a committee. But which role are you predominantly wearing in tonight's session? Cool, lots of parents and guardians and whānau, wonderful. My favourite one is always the other. Thank you. And then the second question, if we can have that one jump up as well now, thanks Hamish, is what age are either your kids or the children that you're coaching? And again, this just helps us frame up the conversation and make sure that we're pitching to the right place. Fabulous. So mostly sitting in that 11 to 15 and then the over 16 years. Wonderful. Thank you very much, everybody. Enough from me. Simone, I will hand over to you for the first part of our session.
Thank you, Kelly. Kia ora koutou. Good evening, everyone. I'm really delighted to be able to introduce you all to Craig and Toni Hoskin this evening. Kia ora, Craig.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, Toni.
Kia ora.
At the beginning of August 2021, not long before their daughter Alicia was going to begin to compete at the Tokyo Olympics, Craig made a Facebook post. And through a shared connection, I was fortunate enough to read it and immediately felt compelled to reach out to understand more about their journey as sports parents. And they were very gracious in responding to me, a complete stranger. Their Facebook post epitomised many of the things that make for a great good sports parent, while at the same time acknowledging it's complex and it's tricky. Specifically, Craig and Toni called out having fun, not specialising early, and not focusing on results as their focus as parents. And they supported both of their daughters, Courtney and Alicia, with these beliefs in mind. Craig and Toni, tell us a little bit, what was fun for your girls and how did you support that?
Kia ora, and first of all, thanks so much for the invite. We hope that the things that we've learned along the way and the stories that we might share tonight just help in some way with parents who are bringing up kids who are really loving their sport, and also coaches and other whānau members.
But just so you know, we will interject on each other. That's the way I do things, okay?
Perfect. We want to have a conversation.
Yeah.
When we were first posed this question, what was fun for your girls? Craig and I were bombing ideas and coming up with lots of different things, and then we looked at each other and thought, actually, we should ask the girls what was fun for them. So we did have quite a lengthy discussion, and there were some common threads that came out from both of them, thinking about their involvement in sport growing up, but also some things that were unique to both girls. One of the common ones was, no surprise, the importance of friends, but this was particularly important for Courtney. She absolutely loved the social connection of being involved in sport. She was the one who would make sure that the end of year functions were going to happen and invited all the younger athletes. But yeah, that was really, really important to her, being with her friends, being part of a team, something bigger. Some of the regatta highlights for her would be around knuckle bones, food, the Kmart visit, and then the races.
The Kmart visit for the costumes?
Just the Kmart
visits. In Gisborne, we don't have a Kmart. So it was one of those, it's like not having a McDonald's, it becomes a thing. So on the way to regattas, I had to stop in at Kmart. So it just became a thing. Yeah. And any girl that came with us, or athlete, even the boys. We took a bunch of boys once to a regatta, and they had to do the Kmart thing.
They were introduced to Kmart.
Yeah, that's just what we did. But then you talk to Alicia. And Alicia's a very different kettle of fish. Whilst she did seek out, the Poldy Bay Kite Club, which we'll probably focus on, was big. It was growing, and it had lots of young kids, and that was good for her. But she was a very different kettle of fish in terms of what pushed her buttons, and it was very much more around mastering the skills, or finding out what her limits were, or just getting into it and finding out how good am I at this? What can I do? What can't I do? What do I need to learn? So, yeah, a different kettle of fish. And in some ways, she probably keyed off me a little bit more in that sense, because that's definitely what I do. I haven't sought out team sports. I don't seek out. I like the individual sports. So yeah, so the two girls are really different, and that led into quite a number of dynamics even going forward as to then how we responded to that.
And I was going to say, I think it's interesting because that Facebook post actually called out the fact that you both wanted to allow the girls to be whoever and whatever they wanted to be, and that you wanted to nurture that as best you could.
Yeah, Toni actually has a really cool quote, or basically it's always reiterating to them, we just want you to be the best version of yourself. And I guess that's where I do struggle a bit with the title of this webinar, because we don't have the answers. Like we don't have a prescription to give out. We just did the best we could to create really well-rounded young ladies, and sport was part of that. So that's who we are. I mean, our background is in sport, so there was a natural sort of journey into that. But we just wanted to grow great girls, physically able, socially able, culturally aware, that whole package. And so it was just making it fun and easy, I guess.
And I know that there was also a real connection to community as well, and that kind of giving back aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll probably journey into this a little bit later, but we definitely, we have a very, like a volunteer service type approach to our family, be it in the church youth group, be it through community work, like surf lifesaving. The girls were active in their lifeguarding. They were involved in supporting coaching at school, in the club. And just there was that idea that for you to experience sport, you are benefiting from the service of others. And because most sports are volunteer-based, from the coaches, administrators, parent help, everything. So if you are in sport benefiting from that, then you will and should give back. The whole way was that whole idea of, being involved in sport is bigger than just competing.
And, from the slide that we've got up there right now, we could say that your girls did a very, very broad range of all sorts of different things. Talk to us a little bit about that.
I think the start of it was probably when they started primary, and Craig and I were really keen to have them participate in a team sport because we knew what that would teach them, and it covered things which were really important for us as a whānau. And so they got to choose what they wanted to participate in, and we were reminded of our parenting in the V, particularly for Alicia. She wanted to do this, that, and that, and that, and that. So had to narrow down those choices and say, okay, you can do this, this, or this. And she chose football. Courtney chose netball. And that having that choice was really important for them, and allowing them to choose as the years went on, to choose things that they're really interested in, they were keen. Some things they would do together, other things they chose not to. Alicia loved her gymnastics. Courtney thought she might try her gymnastics, but the coach quietly said to us, we think Courtney might need to find another sport. So she went off and tried something else. But yeah, I think living in Gisborne allowed the opportunity for the girls to be involved in lots of different things. And there's some great coaches in Gisborne. Shout out to John Scott, who's on the webinar tonight. And also schools like Elminster Intermediate, which actually provided an array of things that the girls could try, see what they liked, have that great sense of belonging, and just develop different skills at different times, be introduced to different environments and scenarios. And I think being part of Gisborne has really helped with that.
Yeah.
And from what you're saying, it sounds like it was very much driven by the girls in terms of them picking and choosing what they wanted to do, and there just happened to be a whole lot of different options.
Yes.
Yeah.
Probably one thing to mention, and those who have come across Alicia particularly as a person, either in a coaching role or whatever, will have noticed that she, being part of that conversation and when appropriate, being part of the decision making is really important for her. And we've known that right from a very, very young age, that she responds best if she can be a part of whatever it is that's going on. She doesn't expect to have to make all the decisions, but she wants to be part of that conversation. And yeah, you're right. That's what we tried to foster in the girls going through sport, and also with their academic pathways, their job opportunities.
And no doubt, they've developed lots of amazing friendships as well, which, as you alluded to, were really important for Courtney.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, like I said, Courtney is a different kettle of fish to Alicia. But I should point, maybe just put out there, Courtney competed at the Junior World Champs in kayaking as well. In fact, shout out to Courtney. If it wasn't for Courtney, Alicia wouldn't have got started in kayaking. There's very much that I'm going to follow in behind my big sister here. So they were both performing at very high levels. But yeah, Courtney just gravitated towards that, the idea of being part of a big community. And that was really natural. So yeah, the friendships which they've generated because of that. I mean, I know Courtney still is in touch with the girls that were paddling with her way back when she was under 14, under 15. Now she's 23, living in Australia. So yeah, quite. And even Alicia has said, whilst it wasn't the key foundation of why she did this, she did say one thing: it's probably allowed me to stay in the sport. So when you start mucking around in sport and you're doing a bit of exercise, it's very easy to drift out of it. And I think she just stayed in it because there was that connection with a good group of kids. Sometimes maybe because there's a good group of parents around as well. I don't know, but yeah. The friendships and the relationships were crucial, really crucial.
And I think, what you're telling us is that for the two girls, fun was incredibly important, but it meant quite different things to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was interesting as we were chatting with Alicia particularly, she said, I now realise that what I called fun as a 12-year-old might not have been what others would have called fun. And she recounted this time, she must have been training for AIMS or something, that she really wanted to be able to go up the steep, I think, is it the steepest hill in Gisborne?
Yeah.
She wanted to be able to get up there on her bike without stopping. So she would nag Craig, can you take me out tonight? Can you take me up that hill tonight? And so Craig would be out there cycling with her. And she said, I loved that. I was trying my hardest. I was pushing. And she said, but, in hindsight, some people might have looked and thought, whoa, there's that pushy dad getting his kid out on her bike again. She said, but it was all me. It was me saying, can we go tonight? So, yeah.
But, I mean, this might lead into other areas, but one thing that I think's been central to the girls having fun in sport was actually the stories. So my background is in more individual sports, so it's running, cycling, bit of kayaking, but definitely those sort of more individual endurance type sports. And whilst the girls were growing up, it was part of our lives. I was competing fairly intensely, and that's another story altogether. But part of, and like I said, you did mention in the post, my default, when I'm in a competitive event, I am super committed. I would empty the tank totally. And as part of our parenting, I was aware that, like Toni alluded to, people refer to me as competitive, i.e. the inference of win at all costs. If I don't win, it affects me negatively, all that sort of stuff. And I didn't feel I owned that or that belonged to me. But because of that, we tended to downplay results, but focus on stories. So stories have really been part of our journey in sport activity. That Alicia actually did again comment saying, what I enjoyed about sport and our journey together has been that the stories you told, be it like if I don't know how many people around here are on cyclists, but cycling has a lot of tactics. So there's the breakaway, there's drafting, there's when to sprint, when to hold back, how to attack the hill. There's quite a bit of detail in doing well or being lucky. And she just loved the stories that when it came time for her to give it a go, all she wanted to do was try and relive those stories. Not necessarily that they would lead to a result, but then she could share her story and then could say, like you said, I saw that too. Or when you said do this, that made this happen, or stuff. So there's lots of this bombing around of just stories. And that seemed to trigger the fun factor for her. It was finding ways in which it made it fun without emphasizing the result.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Craig and Toni. I'm going to get Kelly to join us again. And just noting that there's some really fantastic questions in the chat, and we will definitely come back to them. I think from here, I'll hand over to you, Cal.
Cool. So interaction time, people. So what we'd like to do is hear from you about what do your kids find fun about sports. So pop some of that stuff into the chat. You've obviously heard Toni and Craig's stories. But now thinking about either the kids, your children, or the people that you coach, what do they find fun about sport? Just pop a couple of things in the chat if we can. We'll give people a moment to be able to do that. And Kylie, there's a fantastic question, and we've actually got a lovely bit to head into that as well. So we'll get to you, don't you worry. Cool. So friendship, social interactions, brilliant. Playing with their friends is big. Yep, awesome. Being with their mates, winning and competing. Cool. Love the competition as rowers. Excellent, thank you. Wonderful. Cool, thanks everybody for that. So keep popping that stuff in. It's wonderful for us to see all of that. So I think, Simone, opportunity now to dive a little bit more into some of the research, right, around why do our tamariki and rangatahi, why do our kids and young people, why do they play sport? So what do we know from our research and insights?
So our research and insights tell us overwhelmingly that young people play sport for fun. And you can see here, there's two pieces of New Zealand-based research. So Sport New Zealand's Active New Zealand survey in 2018, which shows 76% of young people play sport primarily, more than any other reason, for fun. And then Simon Walters' research, which was done back in 2012, again demonstrated the same thing, that kids want to play sport because it's fun. Fun, however, is an elusive and abstract concept. Yeah. We all know when we're having it, but it can be really difficult to define. And as older adults, we can tend to equate fun with silliness and not being on task, which takes me to the next piece of research, which was from a woman called Amanda Visick from George Washington University. And she's absolutely renowned for this research, exploring what fun is. Her work with 8 to 17-year-olds uncovered 81 different determinants of what fun meant to them. 81, like I don't know if I could come up with the 81 on my own.
Yeah, that's a long list, eh? That's
a very long list,
of stuff.
Let me tell you. And what she actually found is that fun is synonymous with trying your best and working hard. And these were the two determinants that were ranked 1 and 2 in that list of 81. And it may surprise you to know that winning came in at number 40. So a long way down the list. The determinants were then grouped via a sorting process led by the young people who provided the feedback into 11 fun factors containing the related sort of determinants. And you can see the top 3 fun factors here, which are very much around, being part of a team, trying hard, and receiving really positive coaching. These fun factors effectively provide a roadmap to adults, and it makes fun much more tangible and concrete and easier to understand. I can't tell you the number of times that I hear people say, well, if kids are smiling, that means they're having fun. Now, I think what's interesting is if you put that in the context of trying your best and working hard, if I was doing that, I'm certainly not going to have a big smile on my face. So it's a bit of a fallacy that that's the sign that fun is being had. I think when we link back to what Craig and Toni had to say, we can really see that those things were quite important factors to both of their girls, despite calling out that Courtney obviously really liked the social aspect as well. So I think it's a really interesting connection back to what they shared.
And I think it's, the importance here is really understanding what motivates our kids to play, what do they find fun, but then actually digging a little bit deeper into that and going, well, fun, well, what does that mean to you? Because 81 different things, it can mean a whole range of things. And that's part of the challenge here, right, is being able to go, I understand what my kids find fun about sport, and now my role as a parent, how do I support that to happen? And as we heard from you, Toni, before, it means different things to different people. So your support and your role as a parent needs to be flexible depending on what those kids want, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think the interesting thing to also know is that, with winning being number 40, it's not to say that young people don't like to win.
Yeah.
And we would never want to say that winning is a bad thing. I think the difference is when that winning comes at a cost. And those costs being, enjoyment and, just not having a great experience.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
I'd really say this isn't about saying winning is a bad thing.
And so what we've done is we've popped that slide there and the link for the research to Amanda Basick's research in the Files tab. So you'll be able to click into that. There's a slide there that you can have a look at with all of that information, and then there's also a link to where the research is. So I'll hand back over to you, Simone.
Thank you. I guess one of the things to call out, Craig and Toni, and you've certainly acknowledged this, parenting isn't easy, and we don't always get it right. And you have quite openly said along the way that there were some mistakes that you made. I guess what we'd really love to understand is, how did you manage that balance between development and performance?
That's a very good question. And just like to say that we have the benefit of hindsight here. We sit and chat and things crystallize, I think, as the years go on. Us being younger parents in the thick of parenting pre-teens and teens, it wasn't always so clear. But we've really enjoyed and benefited, I think, looking at the different strengths of the girls. And as you've said, fun means different things to them both. Different things motivate them. So having the time to journey with the girls and get to know those things better so that then we can have the conversations, even at 21 and 23, still having those conversations about, supporting them in whatever way is appropriate and makes sense for them. But some of the things that we did learn along the way, quite a few actually, helping them process disappointment and success is probably one of the big ones, and I've got two that I can talk to. But on the process, success and disappointment, the girls had a fantastic role model in Craig, who, in listening to all his stories about strategies of cycle races and, the mechanicals and the ins and outs of that, the girls saw Craig have performances that were disappointing for him, either because the bike broke or the strategies didn't work or whatever. No, not the bike broke, the puncture. So they could see how he processed that disappointment. He acknowledged it, but he didn't dwell on it. He said, well, that really sucked, but he sort of got on with that. So I think that was pretty huge for the girls. But we all know as parents that seeing our kids go through really disappointing things, it's hard. And it was so hard. And you know, I can remember countless times having tearful hugs when the girls had really disappointing performances, but really showing them that our support was unconditional, that, yeah, we felt gutted for them. And sometimes we got a little bit entwined in that disappointment. But yeah, it was gutting. We feel that, but you know, we care, but we sort of don't.
So just another little quote Toni has. She's often said to the girls in terms of kayaking, this is something you do. It is not who you are. Yeah. And I mean, Toni's the more wisdom one of the couple here. But having that reinforcement to say, yes, this performance is disappointing and it hasn't gone. And based on your training, you may feel that you could have done better, but someone was better than you. And because of that, you got beaten. Oh, well, it's not who you are. Who you are is how you process that disappointment, and conversely, how you process that success. So I think that's where the goal of de-emphasizing that result resulted in other things being elevated up.
And you know, look, it sounds as though you obviously did a pretty great job of sort of role modeling that kind of emotional control in dealing with situations that, you know, at both ends of the spectrum may have been really positive or not so good.
And the other one that we've talked about often, which probably I found the hardest and probably the hardest thing in terms of the girls in their sport, was the day that Alicia and Courtney were in the same race. And Alicia had been put up an age group because she was preparing to go up an age group the following season. And it was in a K1 200. And Alicia's a sprinty kayaker. Courtney prefers the slightly longer. And the inevitable happened, and Alicia beat Courtney. And we knew it was coming, but we hadn't really prepared ourselves for it to be now. And we all burst into tears.
No. Every female burst into tears. So, but just on that, Alicia burst into tears.
Yeah.
So coming after the race, because she just did her thing. She has this thing of staying in her lane, or staying in her boat, and she's done it since she was, I think, even when John Scott, who's here at Games, she would take herself off. So she's been very mentally able to do things, and so she got off the water and broke into tears.
And that as I did, because but Alicia said, I didn't want to win. I didn't mean to win. And I know how much Courtney loves kayaking, and I didn't want to disrupt that for her. And so that forced us into a time to really talk openly about, for Courtney, why do you kayak? What do you love about it? As we've talked about, it came back to those social connections. And she felt that belonging. She loved the trips. She loved being part.
And she loved training.
And she loved the training. She loved working toward a goal. And so we just said, well, hold on to those. You do you. And that's why you kayak. But then we also had to have a chat with Alicia. Well, why do you kayak? And for her, it was just about that challenge, which Craig talked about before. She loved really pushing herself and seeing how far she could go and learning new things. And saying, well, you know, you girls have got quite different reasons about why you're kayaking. One is not better than the other, they're just different. And it took a long time to have this conversation because it was really raw and really emotional for quite some time. But it set them up, I think, to really appreciate each other's strengths and each other's differences. And yeah, we probably from that point really encourage them, get in K2s together, canoe together, and do those things that you love doing, and seek those opportunities to do it together.
And I guess it goes back to, your intention to nurture them both to be the best versions of themselves, whatever that might be, and acknowledging and recognising, as you said, the different strengths. So I'm just curious, obviously navigating that as parents is one thing, but with the two girls, how was it for them?
Yeah, really good question.
So we actually discussed this at tea tonight, and we wondered that event, that hitting us in the, some things hit you in the face and go, come on, approach this one. One is, did that shape us as parents going forward in talking about or celebrating results? Because we knew it was possibly going to be raw for Courtney, and we didn't want to elevate one type of performance over another. So I don't know. I don't know whether we downplayed results from then onwards, because we sort of sat around for a while going, did we ever really celebrate results? And we can remember celebrating like girls at Girls High, if they got an academic award or a sporting award, or the sort of end of year achievement awards. And we can remember celebrating those, but we don't have a lot of memory about overly celebrating
a result.
So having to put that out there, maybe we protected both girls, and that was our coping mechanism. I don't know the answer to that one.
But yeah, we celebrated those things which were important to us.
Yeah.
That doing your best on the day, being respectful of others, all those other things. The red plate came out, the cheers came out.
We even have every week, even now still, as we do our little messenger calls, we still have highlights of the week where you pull out something which is your highlight, allowing the girls to express what has made them joyful this week, this month. We even have a highlight of the year. I mean, it goes on and on, I tell you.
And look, this kind of reminds me of, the story that you shared with me around, the first question being, tell me about the race, not the result, which again is just reinforces that was an important piece, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's actually quite a vivid part of our journey that we lived next door to a family of boys, and just anyone who here has boys, they're a different beast. So we're not describing anything for boys, because we would often, so they all got involved in cycling as well. So we would take, like, literally, I would go to a race sometimes and I had 4 bikes on the top and 3 on the back. I had 7 to 8 bikes from the various cohorts around here going off to a cycle race on a Tuesday night. And even they had to accommodate our storytelling. So we'd come back after 6 o'clock in the evening, and 7 o'clock, you finish the race, come back home, and we'd all do a big debrief, and we'd all share our own story. Now the boys would default to, I won, or I just about won, or I could have done this. And so they regularly learned that's not how we rolled, that it was all about the story. Now the results were cool, there's no doubt. And it was a handicap race, so there's a good chance everyone won. But yeah, that just seemed to be the way we coped or did it. I don't know. So yeah, sharing the story was the key.
And, that fosters greater connection, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I guess it allowed you to explore why you were doing this. And I don't know, you can pull it intrinsic versus intrinsic, extrinsic motivations and all that sort of stuff. These races, there was money on the line. We had a little pool which was going up. But I think what I've seen with the girls, they carried on through kayaking, into surf, lifesaving, into canoe. The fact that they carried on so long, there had to be an intrinsic part to it. And I think that's where it moved beyond the result, that they were there. What pushed their buttons was more than just the result. I saw some people saying about the travel, like the opportunity to travel was one of Courtney's.
I think that it would be remiss, though, not to acknowledge that clearly you created a really supportive environment in order for both of them to sort of flourish. And I guess that kind of leads us to our next slide. And Kelly, I will pull you back in here, which is, the introduction of our Good Sports Spine. So unfortunately, what we know, New Zealand and international research is telling us that unfortunately lots of young people are not opting into sport. And over the last decade in particular, we've seen quite a significant drop-off. And thought leaders in community sport, both in New Zealand and internationally, have recognised that this decline is underpinned by a really complex interaction of changing societal patterns. And ultimately, many of today's sports experiences just aren't meeting the needs of young people as effectively as they could. Importantly, adults in their various roles, and parents in particular, are critical for enabling sport experiences which meet the needs of their children. Unfortunately, research indicates that even despite the best of intent at times, parents can inhibit children from having great sport experiences. And here we'd like to introduce you to the Good Sports Spine.
And so this is, I think one of the things I heard in the conversation that you were having with Craig and Toni just before is it's such a challenging space. There are so many different dimensions of, why kids are playing sport and how you create those environments. And so this spine is, in essence, a bit of a framework or a tool to use to support some decision making, right?
Yeah. So the Good Sports Spine is a sense-making tool to help adults understand how they impact on children's sports experiences. And you can see that there's two different climates which should be viewed as the opposite ends of a continuum. And we would advocate that adults should move more towards a climate of development. And if you think back to some of the things that Toni and Craig talked about quite specifically earlier on, I'm sure that you can start to draw some connections. We believe that every young person in sport deserves a climate of development where parents and other adults in their lives define success as effort and improvement, include everyone so they feel they matter, share control with kids, design for learning through play, and enable children to have a variety of experiences. In doing so, a climate of development can better support our young people's most basic needs for inspiration, connection, empowerment, play, and variety. And this makes for a positive experience in sport.
And so for everyone on the call tonight, we've dropped a copy of this into that files folder as well. So click on that little files button, and what it will be a bit bigger than what we've got on the screen right now. But I think you're right, Simone, there's an element of when you think back to, an opportunity to reflect on our own, the way that we interact with our kids in sport, whereabouts on this continuum we might sit, and there might be times where we move from either end. But the important part is about going, actually, okay, reflecting back on what do I do and what type of environment am I creating? And the more we can spend our time in that climate of development, the more time that we can, like we heard from Toni and Craig before, tell us a story before you tell us about the result.
Yeah.
Letting them have multiple opportunities. That first photo, which had a number of different sports on it, right? So the variety.
Absolutely. And I think, it was interesting because they obviously acknowledged that Alicia really liked to have a say in what she was doing, which, in allowing her to do so really met her need to have a little bit of control over what was going on. And in turn would have made her more motivated to want to do things because she had some choice.
Yeah.
And, I think it's really important to kind of recognize those things, recognize the variety of different opportunities that they had to try a multitude of different sports. In terms of specialising, correct me if I'm wrong, it was reasonably late in the piece that one particular sport became front and centre?
Yeah, so Alicia kind of made the decision around 15, 16. Because at that time she was competing. She competed at quite high level cycling, triathlon, duathlon, multi-sport. She was starting into surf lifesaving, so had done her guarding duty, her bronze and stuff. And it was just, so someone else asked the question, when, as parents, when did we, or how did we manage that? And that's where we did step in and said, that balance between society, your schoolwork, so academia was one of our pillars that we said, so it was a must-have. You are going to do your schoolwork. There's no negotiations. Then there's the sport, then there's the culture, and then there's sort of society stuff. So for us to maintain that balance across the family unit, we had to negotiate with them or massage them into choosing something. Just, you can't do 5 or 6 sports. There's just not enough time in the day. And even Alicia said that she vaguely recalls at one stage getting beaten at nationals. One of the girls nudged her in a 200, and she sort of had that thing going, oh, so I need to start training. Because properly, she would train. She was fit. I mean, she was an incredibly fit young lady. But you've got to start fine tuning that little tape of it. So at 15, 16, she decided that she wanted to focus predominantly on kayaking. Courtney was a bit the same. So again, Courtney did cycling. Her netball carried on for quite a while, and then sort of, I guess she was our more academic. So she tended to go more to like, I've gone to university. It's harder now to kayak. I'd like to, but it's just not possible. I'm going to weight up the academic side. So that 15, 16 seemed to be where the girls drifted into a selection.
And so I think that's an interesting point to pick up on, and is around shifting over time and changing over time, so that it isn't just, it's not fixed. We're not always in one place. And actually there's an important reflective piece that as parents, we need to make sure that we're continually checking in with what our kids are interested in doing and why they're playing sport. And also from this perspective, as our kids grow and change, their development needs change. And so where they sit along this continuum, how do we support them to continue to be in these cognitive development spaces?
Yeah, we actually, and I think too, one thing for us as parents was to be involved. So one thing we haven't touched base really on is that we've been, and we sort of negotiated this with the girls all the way along. We've been very actively involved in the girls' sporting environment. And from school right through the club. So clubs need parents to tow trailers with kayaks and surf skis on them. We did that. Sometimes you have to step into a coaching support role, be on the committee. So we've always been in the periphery of the girls' experiences. And because of that, we were very active in what was going on. And sometimes we actually did step in. There were times when, because of Alicia's natural ability, and there was one part where they would like to select her for the age group up for world champs. And we stepped in and said, no, and she's not ready for that. I mean, and we don't want to see her go to a world champs. And I don't know, we don't know what would have happened. There's a lot of stuff going on at that time. And so we said, no, you're not going to the world champs. There's time for that. There will always be time. Well, that's a bit of a thing, but there will be opportunities that will come your way.
But that was in discussion with her, and she helped us frame up the letter or the email that we sent to the sporting organisation, and it was definitely a part of that.
And I think those are some of the really difficult things that you have to navigate as a parent, because you don't want your kid to miss out on something, right? Or to be hindered by the fact that you don't think it's the right time for them. And so stepping in and advocating for them because you know them the best and it's in their best interest can be a tricky thing to do.
Yeah, and as parents there's that underlying thing of, wouldn't it be cool? You know, like how cool. I mean, you've got the New Zealand Fern, or you've travelled to Portugal, or how cool. You'll get your name in the paper. There's that underlying for a parent, and I think
always got to wrestle.
Yeah, we wrestle. I mean, I love reading about the girls in the newspaper. You know, it's mega cool. But I think when
who's it best for?
Who's it for? Who are you?
Yeah.
I love that you've called that out. That is just fantastic, because you know, oftentimes you do wonder, and you go, "Is this really for this person's child, or is this about them?"
Yeah. And I mean, there is this overlying her heart story, and one thing we did then decide is every moment we will treasure for what is right here and now. So yeah, there's lots in that space.
And so the Good Sports conversation is a really live conversation, right? There's a number of national and regional sports organisations and a number of regional sports trusts that are engaging in this conversation now and really looking at how do we use the spine, how do we support parents and other key adult influencers to reflect on what they're offering, and really look at how do we provide the best quality support. And so I see, you know, there's a couple of comments in the chat there going, how do we get this Good Sports conversation at our place? And so Marina, thank you very much from Sports Taranaki. We love your work. Wonderful plug there. But it is a really important conversation to have, you know, and an opportunity for parents, for you know, coaches as well, to reflect on what kind of environment am I providing? Is it, you know, have a focus on an effort and improvement? Simone, are there any examples that you could give us in particular around a part of the spine and what it would look like in practice?
Sure. So, I mean, obviously, if we're thinking about effort and improvement, the conversation being had is really focusing on, you know, are you getting better? And if we think again back to Amanda Visick's research and what is fun, that's definitely one of the determinants, is that sense of I am getting better, I'm trying hard and I'm getting better. That mistakes are part of learning and growing, and a really important element in terms of allowing young people to try stuff out and experiment and figure things out. And in the long run, if you are looking for some sort of more elite performance, having someone who knows how to make decisions and adapt and adjust as they play is a really important component. And we often hear about players with little game sense, and that's largely as a consequence of having been told what to do all the time. We need to allow young people the space to figure things out on their own. The other thing is we obviously want to recognise the effort and the trying rather than just whether you won or not. There will always be someone who is better. Unfortunately, that's just the nature of the world. But, you know, in our own way, we can all put a massive amount of effort into something and try and can see those improvements, which, you know, are really motivating in a lot of instances. If you're only judging yourself on a win or a loss, that's, you know, pretty hard to sustain your enjoyment over a long period of time if that's the only thing you're judging yourself on.
Cool. So one of the, you know, and I encourage people, keep putting some questions into that chat because we've got three outstanding presenters here tonight, and so the opportunity to pick their brains. There's a question that I've got that I'd like to put to you guys. You've talked a lot about you were really making sure that you did the best for the girls, and you were trying to make them, you could grow great girls, you know, stories over results, putting 7 bikes on the back of the car. But how do you look after yourselves as sports parents as well? Because if we're not the best version of ourselves, how are we then going to be able to give the best version to our kids and support their experiences? So how did you look after yourself?
I'll drop in.
Or on reflection, what could you have done differently?
That is such a good question.
It's made me sweat.
Because often when the kids are 11 to, 17, 18, that's often when we're up to here with work and just juggling so much. So that is such a good question.
And it might be just a reflection thing. Say, maybe we didn't get it right all the time.
No, I definitely did not get it right. But one thing I can remember valuing, if this is of use, is having people around us who weren't, they were interested in the girls and what they were doing, but they weren't into sport. So they weren't so excited about the whole sport thing as we were. And I really appreciated talking to them and listening to their perspectives on things, and some really good friends who could see things that were playing out in the girls that we couldn't. So I can remember thinking, that's hard to hear, but I really appreciate that. Thank you. So I think that helped.
That even carried through the Olympics. Some people just don't. Some people aren't into the Olympics. Like, I don't get it, but having those as our friend group, it was good. It balances us out. Yeah. But about the personal health thing, we talked about this evening, and we had this idea that, well, that's not our idea, but we incorporated it into our life, that the girls were not the center of our universe. They joined our universe. So we already did stuff. Toni and I actively in sport. We used to go mountain bike touring. Every Christmas we'd go someplace bush and just do our stuff. And so the girls learned quickly that they joined into our life and they then circled with us. So to keep us healthy, we carried on doing what fills our soul. And that was how we maintained our relationship. It's how we fed each other, fed into them, they fed into us even. So I think just by not making them the center, the conversations were different. That we as they grew, and like Toni's V of love thing, as they grew into great young adults, we learned from them, they learned from us. We shared each other's pains, our joys, our successes, everything. I think that's how I kept myself healthy, by keeping it balanced.
Amazing. Now we're coming to the end. We've got about 3 minutes left here. It always goes far too quickly, right? But what I'd love to hear from you guys, and Simone, from you as well, is if there was one thing, one little takeaway message, the most important thing from tonight that you want people on, the over 200 people on our call tonight to hear. Simone, I might start with you. What's the one thing that you would like people to take home that they can action?
Sure. So it's A, B, and C. Ask your children or young people what they want, what they like. Believe them when they tell you, and change, adapt what you're doing to meet their needs. That's from me.
Technically, that's 3 things, but I'll let you away with that.
ABC.
Something I would do.
Toni, what about you? What's one thing that you want to leave? Well, okay, you can have 3 too.
I will have 2. The first is enjoy your kids. Listen to their stories, because you learn so much, and it's a delight. Secondly, I would say appreciate those who are feeding in to your kids. So right from year dot, the coaches, the other parents, even now, Alicia's got a fantastic coaching team around her. And I look at the Good Sports Spine, and there's still some key things in that climate of development that those elite coaches are doing. And I think that's why she's loving it so much. So yeah, the key things are listen and enjoy their stories and appreciate those who are feeding in.
Wonderful. And Craig, any quick snippet to leave us on?
If there's any guys here, find yourself a really great woman. A great wife is just central to it all. No, but seriously though.
Oh, that was serious.
Seriously, we can end that one there. Totally, yeah.
I same thing, stories, but also I think surround you. Like someone asked the questions about coaches and administrators or coaches. We were incredibly lucky and recognised that we were surrounded in Poverty Bay with terrific coaches who aligned with our beliefs. I don't know what that would look like if we hadn't had that. Would I push back or what? So I think, surround yourself with people who align with you.
Amazing. Hey, look, there are a number of questions that we haven't got to tonight, and some really important ones too. We could absolutely spend a ton more time talking about how the parent-coach relationship. There's some stuff in there around complaints, and how do you deal with conflict and those kind of things. And importantly, there's some conversations in here about load and about how you manage some of that training.
Yep.
So look, we're not going to get to all of that, but I assure you what we do is we grab all of the chat and all of the questions, and we'll look to come back to people, through the Balance is Better website, through other opportunities like this to talk in more depth about some of this stuff. So look, for me, the absolute key takeaways were friends are so important, being part of a team, understanding your kids, the differences, being able to parent in a way, and this is really easy, right? Being able to parent in a way that supports different needs, but that actually it is tough, and we're parents, we love our kids and we want to give them the best opportunity. Can we provide that best opportunity in a climate of development that makes them, I think what you said, grow into great girls or boys. So look, Simone, Craig, Toni, thank you so much. We've had outstanding feedback come through the chat. Everyone's so appreciative of your time. I know that I have taken a lot from our conversations in the lead up to this and from tonight. So thank you both. Simone, it is always a pleasure to do these with you. So thank you for joining us, and thank you everyone for contributing into this call and onto the chat. If you want to find out more about Balance is Better, have a look around the Balance is Better website, sign up to the e-newsletter. There's a number of other webinars and a number of other articles that can support some of this conversation as well. So I'll close with our karakia. Tu tawa mai I runga, tu tawa mai I raro, tu tawa mai I roto, tu tawa mai I waho, kia tau ai te mauri tū, kia tau ai te mauri ora, tū whakamaua kia teina. Haumie, huie, taiakie. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Thank you all so very much for joining us tonight.